Have you ever doubted your ability to lead, to be an excellent leader? Have you ever felt like you just didn't have the characteristics or the innate qualities to lead? If you had asked me even 2 years ago if I thought I would make a good leader, I would have said, heck no. I tried that. I tried that 3 years ago. Didn't work out so well for me. Felt like I'd failed. So if you've ever doubted your own leadership ability, stick with me till the end because you're going to be glad that you did. So I know today why I felt like I had failed when I walked away from a university leadership position in 2017. I just thought it was not my calling. I didn't like to manage people. So let me share a part of my story with you so that you'll understand the background of why I felt like I couldn't lead and why I know I can today. So I grew up a very shy, sensitive, socially awkward little girl, and I did some crazy stuff to get out of school. Now I know I had a school phobia, but back then I didn't have the words for that. So if you grew up back in the day when I grew up, we had mercury thermometers. We didn't have the digital thermometers. We had mercury. And most days, probably 2 out of 5, I would go up to my teacher, Mrs. Brown, and I would say, "Oh, Miss Brown, I need to go home. My stomach hurts." And a lot of the days, she would just send me back to my seat and say, "It'll be okay, honey. Go on back, sit down, and you'll be all right." Some days, though, she would let me go to the health room if I really complained. And when I went to the health room, when the nurse stuck that mercury thermometer under my tongue, when she would walk out to go check on the next child, I found out that if you took that thing out of your mouth and shook it down backwards, the mercury would look like you were sick. And the trick was to get it to the right temperature, 101, 102, maybe even 103, you got to go home. Home was my safe place. One day, I shook it down too hard, and the nurse came back in the room and she said, "Oh my gosh, this thermometer's broken. It's 107, and she threw the dang thing in the trash can. Oh my goodness, I was so embarrassed, so humiliated. I don't think I ever did that again. But that shyness, that awkwardness, that stayed with me throughout my entire school life. And it really came to fruition in 9th grade. School became very, very scary one Friday afternoon in 9th grade. It was one of the worst days of my life, actually. So I'm sitting in Mrs. Hood's class. I'll never forget her name and the way she looked. She was a teacher, really, really tall teacher. She had dark brown hair, but she had this huge blonde streak in front. It was very, I don't know, significant to me, just the way she looked and the way she acted. She was a very stern lady. And so she called on me to read, and I had read many, many times before. So reading was not a problem for me. But all of a sudden, I felt 30 other 15-year-olds listening to me reading. The sensation that my body started having, now I know, was a major panic attack. At the time, I didn't know what was happening. But my breath got really, really shallow. I started hyperventilating. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking, my voice was shaking, and I looked up at Mrs. Hood like, "Mrs. Hood," I mean, I didn't say anything to her, but I looked up like, "Please let me stop. Can't you see that something's going on with me?" And she just looked at me with these really stern eyes and said, with no words, "Keep reading." She just looked at me and sort of pointed, like, "Keep reading." It was the most humiliating, shaming experience of my life, because as you know, you all have been teens, you know how mean 15-year-olds can be. My best friend on the left side was really concerned. I could feel her like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening to Beth?" My so-called friend on the right side was laughing. So I went home that day and I didn't tell my parents about it. I was so humiliated. I just repressed it. And you know what happens when you repress a traumatic experience. For me, that was a traumatic experience. So from age 15 to 35, I had a phobia of any type of public performance. To even think about doing something like I'm doing today would have been completely out of the question. Completely. I skipped school when I had to give a presentation or was scheduled to give a presentation. I quit singing in church. My family sang all the time, and I said, no more, I'm not going to stand up, because if I do stand up in front of people, I know what's going to happen. I will have another panic attack, and I want to avoid that at all cost. So that's what I did. And when I was somewhere in my mid-30s, I decided I did not want to live that way anymore. I did not. So me, a leader, are you kidding? I wouldn't even speak up in small meetings. So how did I get from there to here, being able to confidently speak to you today? It took a lot of work and a lot of practice, but it was so worth it. I took small baby incremental steps towards the very thing that I was afraid of, which was public speaking. And that's one of the things I do in my business today, emergingYOU, is to help other people get over that anxiety. It's actually wired into our DNA. And when I found that out, I was like, well, no wonder I had a panic attack when I was reading out loud. Any type of public performance can be super, super scary. So I really did not see myself as a leader until recently. So back to the year 2017, when I left the university position because I felt like I had failed as being a leader. After graduating from the University of Alabama in 2014, I took an associate dean position at a college university in North Carolina. And I had a staff of about 9 people. Not a huge staff, but enough. And I was so excited when I got that position. I was like, yes, this is my time. This is my time to be a leader, to show myself and to show others what I was capable of doing. So to say that I was elated was an understatement. I was going to take everything I had learned about leadership and put it into practice. I had so many theories of leadership under my belt because that is what I studied at the University of Alabama, was educational leadership. So, I felt prepared. The problem is the theories were not me. They were theories, and they were theories about how society expects us to show up as leaders. And when I tried to lead like I thought society wanted me to lead, or like I thought my staff wanted me to lead, or my supervisor wanted me to lead, just didn't work. It didn't work for me. I walked away from that position feeling like I had failed at leadership, feeling like that's it. Leadership is not my calling, so that is not what I'll be doing from now on. Most days from that job, I came home with a headache. I came home stressed out and frustrated. But I had simply forgotten what I had learned about 10 years previous to that I had been gifted with certain talents, innate talents, that I could turn into strengths. And when I remembered that a few years ago and built my business around that and started showing up and leading like I'm supposed to lead, let me tell you, it made all the difference in the world. So, you and I have a certain set of innate talents. We are unique. The chances of you and I having the same top 5 talents and strengths in the same exact order are 1 in 33 million. And you may think that's not such a big deal, but it is. And I want to share with you now just how big of a deal it is, and how when you tune in to your talents and you lead out of your talents and your strengths and you build those strengths, leadership, it's a breeze. Let me share with you about CliftonStrengths and how you can find out what your top 5 are. Let me share my screen and pull up a few slides. Here we go. So Donald Clifton was a World War II, that's hard to say, veteran. And when he came back from the war, he decided that rather than studying what is wrong with people, he wanted to be a psychologist. But he decided, I want to study what is right with people. And he went to the University of Nebraska and started his career there and ended up teaching there as a professor. And at first he looked at his students. What are the best, brightest students doing? And then later on in his career, he started looking at Fortune 500 companies. What are the best CEOs of business doing? What are people who are super successful in their lives doing? How do they think? How do they feel? What do they do to make them so successful? And he believed that what will happen when we think about what is right with people rather than fixating what is wrong with them, we can then go out and find out what talents and strengths people have that they can innately use to help themselves. He believed that an entrepreneur needed to know his or her talents and skills just like a doctor. And he or she needed to know what skill, what talent, what strength to call on at a particular given time. So that was his philosophy, and he's been named the father of positive psychology. So I mentioned this earlier, that the likelihood of you and I having the same top 5 strengths in the same exact order is 1 in 33 million people. And you and I having the same top 5, not necessarily in the same order, but having the same top 5 is 1 in 278,000 people. That's pretty significant. The philosophy behind strengths is that you and I already have everything we need to live a successful life and be happy. We don't have to go out and find it. We don't have to borrow it from somewhere else, like I tried to do when I was borrowing leadership theories in my leadership position. I already have it. You already have it. We just need to recognize it. We need to name it, nurture it, celebrate it, and we also need to build on it. We may have innate talents, but we need to add skill, knowledge, and experience to those talents. And so let me just explain the difference between a talent and a strength. If and when, and I hope you do take the CliftonStrengths assessment, if and when you take it, you will be measuring your natural talents. Naturally recurring ways of thinking, feeling, and believing. In order to turn that into a strength, you have to add knowledge and skill to it, and experience. Knowledge, skill, and experience. And then you can turn that talent into a strength. And so that when you use that strength, you are almost performing perfectly. Now, I am a recovering perfectionist, so I'm not big on perfectionism, but when you use your natural talents, it comes and you turn them into strengths. What you do in life is so much easier, you are more fulfilled, and you're joyful because you're using what you've been given. So let's talk a little bit about this. Since you have not taken the assessment yet, you're not able to say, oh, well, my top 5 are empathy, intellection, developer, input, arranger. You don't know yet what your natural talents are. But one of the ways that we might be able to help you discover it is by looking at the barrier label of these. Every strength has a basement side and has a barrier label. So when we look at these, you might be able to identify, oh yeah, I've been called that before. Maybe what I have is a strength. So let's look at a couple of these. Barrier labels are the basement side of our strengths, and a lot of times we, our parents, our schools, our teachers can label us and dismiss our talent and strength as a weakness. So this may help you figure out what some of your strengths are. If you have ever been told that you talk too much, then you might have communication as one of your natural talents. And instead of being labeled as someone who talks too much, you are just a person who brings new ideas to life by telling stories. So let's look at another one. This is one of my talents, one of my strengths, positivity. And I've been called Pollyanna before. I have been asked, why are you smiling all the time? Why are you so happy? You need to be more of a realist. Well, actually, my positivity serves me well, especially in times of trouble, in times of times that we're thinking negatively in the world. My positivity really helps me get through. And so that may be one of your talents. Another one is, have you ever been accused of being over-involved with someone? You might have the talent of empathy. And you are actually a wonderful listener and supporter, but sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be so involved in that person's life. Well, that person may need you. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about how we need to add knowledge and skill to those talents so that we don't become that negative version of ourselves. What about pack rat? Has anybody ever said, oh my gosh, why do you collect all these things? Why do you collect books? Why do you collect figurines? Why do you collect anything? Why do you collect ideas? You might have the talent of input. You love to collect things, and you're a great resource, and you have an excellent memory. Have you ever been called fake or shallow? Some of us, not me, but some of us have the talent of woo, which means winning others over. You don't meet a stranger. When you go out to eat and you go to the restroom, you may come out with 2 new friends in the restroom. If you get on the elevator at a convention, you probably have 3 new friends when you come out, because you're just always winning people over with your bubbly personality. But the downside of that is sometimes people can put a label on you as fake or shallow. In reality, you're outgoing, you're a networker, and you're people-oriented. Have you ever been called an a loner, excuse me. Have you ever been called a loner? Or do people tell you that you tend to stay by yourself and you're isolated? Or why are you always in your head? Why are you always thinking? Why are you not talking to us? You may have the talent of intellection. And that means you can have a party all by yourself inside of your head. It's a very great strength. If you are someone who doesn't need a lot of friends, you don't have woo, you may be a relator, and you might have a small circle, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 best friends, and you go very deeply with those friends. You make a great friend. But some people might say you're a little cliquish. So think about, have I ever been accused of being cliquish? Or why don't I want to go out and party with new people? Why do I always have the same group of people? Have you ever been told by anyone that you're overcommitted? or that you are a workaholic, you might have the strength or the talent of achiever. These people start every day at ground zero, and they do not feel good unless they're crossing off multiple lists. Even on vacation, they're probably going to make a list of what they're going to do on vacation. Those are your achievers. Couple more. Have you ever been told that you're just such a dreamer? Why are you always looking into the future? We're not there yet. Actually, you're very imaginative and creative, but people can label you as being on fantasy island. This is the talent of futuristic. Have you ever been told that you lack follow-through? You start something and you just don't finish? This could be the label or the talent of ideation. When you have a natural recurring talent of ideation, you love new ideas, you love to compare those ideas, you're always thinking, you have a very agile mind, you learn quickly, but sometimes people might say, but where's the follow-through? Have you ever been told you're stubborn or opinionated? Actually, that might be your belief talent showing up in life. Now, belief talent does not prescribe what you believe in, but whatever you believe in, whatever your values are, you're very steadfast, you're very passionate about them, and you are not going to give up anything for your beliefs. So what about bookish? Anybody call you a book freak, or that you lack focus on results? You might have the talent of learner. That is my top strength, and I really believe that learner helps me become a good teacher. I love to learn. I've often said that if I could be paid to stay in school for the rest of my life, I definitely would do it. One or two more. Oh no, that's it. So let me give you the definition of a strengths leadership or a strengths leader. Gallup Incorporated has been researching top leaders for over 5 decades now. And they ask followers, people who are in a following position, what is a leader? What is a good leader? And the act of getting individuals aligned and moving in the same direction toward a desired outcome is a good leader. So, their research has also shown us what followers expect of exceptional leaders. So if you ever desire to be a leader, if you're already a leader, even if you do not know your strengths yet, these 7 things can help you hone your own ability to show up with these qualities. Number 1 is building relationships. 2 is developing people. We're going to dive deeper in just a minute into all of these. 3 is to lead change. 4 is to inspire others. 5 is to think critically. 6 is to communicate clearly. And 7 is to create accountability. So let's dive into some of these. So obviously, if we don't have any followers, we're not being a leader. We've got to have people that want to follow us. You cannot lead unless, if you look behind and no one's back there, you're not leading. Now, leaders can be leaders of families, leaders of community organizations, leaders of small informal groups, leaders of Fortune 500 companies. A leader does not necessarily mean a big money-making power machine. A leader can be the mother of a family. And building relationships is the first thing you want to concentrate on. People need to connect with each other. They need to share trust, and they need to have relationships to thrive. Developing people. If people feel like they're not growing, they're not developing, they're not moving closer to their own success, and you're leading them, they're not going to stick around very long. They may come on board for a while. If you have a coaching practice, if you are teaching, if you are leading, but your followers feel like they're not making progress, they're going to leave. They're going to leave. Leading change, the key word being lead. And so when you are a leader, you have to keep moving forward. You don't want to get stale and stuck with the same thing. You want to keep the same purpose, the same mission, the same vision. That's going to remain the same. But people want to move forward. They want to have you help them grow and become more successful. One of the great ways to do this is to charge your followers with taking some responsibility for change. If they want change, how can they make that happen? Ask them for ideas. Inspiration. Sometimes people feel like inspiration is too soft to be a leadership quality, but no, it's definitely not. And followers want to be inspired. They want to have a greater vision, a greater meaning to their lives. And if you don't continuously inspire them, they may also drop off. The next one is to think critically. I'll be honest with you, this is one that I constantly work on. Strategic thinking and analytical thinking is not one of my top 5 strengths. I have to call on other people who do that really well to help me think critically. But evaluating plans, understanding the risk that you're taking, decision making, organizing your thoughts before you jump in to do something. This is really important for a leader. And communicating clearly. Learn the best way that you communicate, and then learn how your followers want for you to communicate with them. And this is so important. Communication is not just talking. Communication is listening. And I think sometimes as leaders we forget that. We feel like we always have to be up front. We don't. We need to ask questions, listen, and brainstorm with our followers. And then creating accountability. Everybody wants someone to keep them accountable. I know I need it in my life. But this is especially true for leaders. And accountability starts with you. If you make a mistake, tell your followers. Say, I'm sorry. Say, I made a mistake. I'm going to do better. Help me stay accountable in this area that I need help with. So that is a wrap up of the 7 expectations that followers have of great, excellent leaders. And this is the Strengths Leadership Development Framework. So you and I, we are born with natural talents. We go through life, we gather experiences, we develop those talents once we know what they are, and that can turn into a leadership strength. But remember, knowing your unique talents is key, I believe, to leadership. Wrapping up back to the beginning of my presentation today, I felt like I failed at leadership. Now, my followers might think otherwise, but personally, I didn't feel good about how I was leading until I remembered, wow, I had 5, 6, 7 talents that were at the top of who I am, and I can use them to lead others. And now leadership for me is fun. Leadership for me is easy because I'm comfortable in it. I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. I'm not trying to lead like Susan over there or Jane over there. I'm leading like myself. I want that for you as well. If you want to discover your own top 5, I would love to invite you to my next workshop, September 20th. I have 2 workshops, one in the morning at 11:30, one in the evening to accommodate people who are working 9 to 5 at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And here is the link where you can register for that today. Included in the investment for the workshop is the top 5 strengths code, and that's a price of $19.99. So this will change your life, friends. It really, really will. And I hope that you found some value and some worthwhile information that you can take away today.